What's up, YouTube? Chris at Legendary Mana, and it's time for Magic Cards of Legendary Past. Welcome back, everybody, and today we're going to talk about a card that I used to play back in the day. This is the first of many episodes in our Magic Cards of Legendary Past. One thing to note before we begin, please subscribe and like our video, as well as in the comments below. We're trying to get Joe to do video games of Legendary Past, and we need your help to get him to do that. So in the comments below, tell Joe that you want to see video games of Legendary Past, and we will make that happen some way. Anyways, getting back to the first episode of Magic Cards of Legendary Past, we're going to talk about a card that I used to play a long time ago. And I mean a long time ago. I mean, this card came out 18 years ago. 18 years ago. So this was a time in Magic that I was starting to get out of Magic, because I was working on more important things at the time. And Magic for me in the beginning was about playing table Magic with my friends. We would run our own sort of in-house Magic tournaments. I remember one of the tournaments we had was it was like 20 people packed in our house, and we had like 6 or 7 tables set up, and you know, everybody brought their decks that they liked to play, and we put together a nice little fun little tournament, me and my buddies. I thought it was really cool. I mean, at the time there was nothing like that, and meaning for us to go to like a game store, or you know, where we lived in Indiana, there was no place to go play at a game store, so it didn't really exist then. So we did it on our own, in our apartment. We jammed a bunch of people. So one of the decks that I built, I've always been an elf deck player, and so I started dabbling with other cards that were interesting to me. And you know, again, that's the nature of making rogue decks, or decks that are out of the ordinary that most people wouldn't make, which that's this guy right here. So without further ado, let's go ahead and show you the card, Thorne Elemental. Now, not everybody has heard of this card or seen this card. The last printing of it was 7th edition, so that was quite a while ago. But its very first printing was here in the starter deck of 1999. And for those of you who remember, there was a lot of interesting cards, but this was one of the ones in that starter set, so to speak, that I was like, this is interesting. So the card reads, you may have Thorne Elemental deal its combat damage to a defending player as though it weren't blocked. So basically what this card is saying is you can attack with this card, but rather than waiting for combat damage to resolve, it automatically, you can decide to say, do 7 damage to your target player. Your target opponent. Say what? Like, when I saw this card, I was like, wait a minute. I can swing for 7 without you needing to block? Like, that's interesting. I mean, it's like, it's like some of the other, like Forest Walk and stuff like that, but it doesn't require, like, for instance, it doesn't require anything. You could just choose to do 7 damage to target player. Wow, that's interesting. So then when I started thinking about it, and I was like, oh man, so how do we, this is 7 mana, and at the time, sometimes slow decks worked no problem. playing table Magic. But a lot of times, it didn't, because blue black was really big back then. Well, at least in my play group, or I should say, our friends. Blue and black and red were the colors that were played, typically speaking. I kind of gravitated towards white, green, and I would cheat in a little bit of black here and there. But green and white were my sort of quote unquote go-tos at that time. And I played a lot of elves. And so then I was like, how can I use this to ramp into, like using elves to ramp into this? And I was like, man, I mean, if you get this thing out pretty early, I mean, a lot of people don't have a ton of answers if they don't have either a counter spell, or if they don't have, at the time you can boomerang a card back to your hand. So I'm just like, man, how can we do this? And so I'm gonna bring in a few examples of decks that I, from my best recollection, that I played back in the day with this card. There's two decks that actually would be, so I modified them slightly. There's two decks that would be Legacy legal right now, and then there's one that's Modern legal. But to be very honest, I'm going to say I don't think it's a deck that you can go play in a Modern game and actually win with it, because it's just too slow. Although I'm going to actually build it and play it on X-Mage at some point. I think it would be kind of fun to play. It's not gonna win anything. I'm not gonna anticipate to win anything with the deck. But I think it would just be fun for nostalgia to go back and play that deck, because it's very similar to what I played some time ago. The Modern version, let me disclaimer on that. The Modern version of this deck, I built specifically for the ability to play in Modern, or what it could look like to play in Modern today. But again, it's too slow. So without further ado, let's go ahead and move into the first deck. And I use Tapped Out. I like it because it gives, a good amount of information quickly as far as, the stats. I'm a stats nerd, as I'm sure you've seen in my other decks. I should say one other deck tech that I put together. Don't worry, there is more coming, if you like that kind of thing. So anyways, this is the first deck, Thorne Elemental deck, and this uses a lot of mixtures of elemental creatures and ramp to get you into using your elemental creatures. So we have Birds of Paradise, which and anytime you're doing ramp strategies, it's a great card to have. Elvish Spirit Guide. I love this card. I don't know what else to say about it, but I love it. Unfortunately, it's not playable in Modern, or at least I don't think so. I don't think it's played in Modern. I haven't heard of it. Let's see, go back. It's not legal in Modern. But anyways, then we have Molder Slug. Good card. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player sacrificed an artifact. So that was really good against other strategies that use a lot of artifacts, like Lotus Petal and stuff like that. Primeval Titan, good one just to pull out. I think I just added this one recently. How long ago? Man, I'm trying to remember. When did this come out? 2011. Okay. Yeah, I don't remember Primeval Titan being part of my deck back then, because, it didn't come out until later. But I think, I know what happened. So I was looking at this and I was like, another thing that could work would be Primeval Titan. So I took out some of the instants that weren't Legacy legal anymore, and I put in some Primeval Titan to, basically grab some more land. Sylvos Rogue Elemental. It's just a good regenerator, trample. Just another body to put on the board. Kind of like a lightning rod kind of deal. And then you have Thorne Elemental, Tinderwall, which is, just a good little blocker to have. And then Tornado Elemental. Now, if some of you may never seen this card before, but when it's very similar to the Thorne Elemental. When Tornado Elemental enters the battlefield, it deals 6 damage to each creature with flying. Now, obviously, if you're not playing against flyers, this is probably not good. But you may have Tornado Elemental assign its combat damage as those weren't blocked. So now you have 2. You have Tornado Elemental and Thorne Elemental. So, both with a 7 mana cost. If you can ramp into these and they don't have answers, it can get ugly pretty quickly. But again, I don't really feel like this is a viable deck anymore. But feel free to try it out. I mean, if you have some success with it, let me know. Let me know in the comments below. I'm also going to leave some links in the description below to the tapped out decks, so you can download them or export them or however you want to do it. You have access to even comment on it on the below if you're a tapped out member. So anyways, this is the first one. As far as I didn't build any sideboards for these. I don't even remember using sideboards back in the day. I don't remember using sideboards at all. My memories are a little fuzzy, but anyways, moving on. Instance, Might of the Oaks, target creature gets +7/+7 until the end of turn. So think about it this way. Thorne Elemental. You can slap this onto Thorne Elemental or Tornado Elemental. If nobody's got an answer, you can basically swing in for 14 unblocked pretty quickly. Tranquility, destroy all enchantments. Gaia's Touch, you may play an additional land, so it helps you just start, bringing in more lands. And then Lotus Petal for mana of any color to help you out with Tinderwall. So it's nothing really crazy. It's a pretty basic setup. Again, I caution, I don't feel like any of these decks are viable in these formats, in Legacy or in Modern. So don't think that you're going to go ahead and just go slap these together and go play them and win stuff. I don't think these are viable decks. Anyways, moving on. So we move on to the second deck. This one's a little bit more interesting because this is when I was starting to blend in ramp elves into just getting out elementals. So we have Avatar Might. It's kind of interesting card. I liked it. I don't know if it's really a very good card to play because it just costs so much darn mana. But it reads, if an opponent controls at least 4 more creatures than you, Avatar Might cost 6 less to play. So, there's instances that this could work, but again, not highly consistent, so to speak. So we bring in the Elvish Mutant here, which, man, I wish he was legal in Modern, but he's just completely broken. So he's 6, he's a 4/5. He adds 3 mana to your mana pool, and you have Forest Cycling. So tap 2, you can search your library for a forest card. So, it's a lot of mana. It's probably too slow for Modern. If he was maybe a 4 cost instead of a 6 cost, I could see him in Modern. But again, at 4, boy, he would just be way too powerful, I think, in Modern when it comes to that. But that's just, again, my opinion. So moving on, the rest of the elves, we have Flinthorn Elder, tap to create 2. Flinthorn Elves, just another ramper like Land War Elves. Ivy Elemental comes into play with X counters on it, so you can put as many counters on it. I loved this card. When this card came out, I was like, yeah, it was really cool looking too. And it's from the, I think, not Onslaught. What is that? Odyssey, that's right. Anyways, there's Crozen Drover. Creature spells you play with converted mana cost 6 or more cost 2 less to play. So this card allows you to cheat in Thorne Elemental sooner, allows you to cheat in Avatar of Might sooner, so it turns him into a 6 mana cost instead of 8. Sylvos, Rushwood does not have colors but rocks, and we'll get there. But so Crozen Drover is I think at the time was a really good card. Can't play it anymore, but I really like it. Of course, you need 4 Land War Elves, 2 rocks. So again, another one where you could just deal direct damage, and it's regenerating. Rushwood Elemental, he starts growing every turn. You get a +1/+1 counter at your upkeep. Sylvos is still in this deck, and then Thorne Elemental. Now, the interesting part about this deck is, well, I shouldn't say interesting. I always say interesting, and it's not really interesting. The fun part about this deck, it uses some interesting cards. We have Curse of the Worms. If many of you don't know this, I think this was from, I believe, the Torment block. Man, I'm so bad at my set symbols these days. I can't remember everything. Judgment, that's it. Crush of Worms, put 3 6/6 worm creature tokens in play, and it has flashback. It's a pretty big flashback cost. Monstrous Growth, +4/+4. Stream of Life, gain X life. Giant Growth, Naturalize. For those who don't know, Naturalize, destroy target artifact or enchantment. Blanchwood Armor, +1/+1 for each forest you control. Call of the Wild, reveal the top card of your library. It's a creature card, put into play, otherwise put it into the graveyard. Wild Growth, probably one of the best land enchantments. Now we have, I think, Utopia Sprawl, and 18 Forests. So this is it. I mean, this was my take on Elves meets Elemental. I really liked it. You know, this one might have some chant now, but I think it would be fun just to play. I might actually build this one and go play this on X-Mage to just see how it does. Let me know if you decide to try to play it. I think it'd be kind of fun. I remember playing this and it was kind of fun. Again, this is based on my memory. It's a little foggy, but these are based on my cards that I have in my... So I have an old school box of cards that I just stash away, and so I had cards rubber banded together and stuff, and so when I look at these, I'm like, oh man, I think this was my old deck, and so I'm just, you know, this is all based on memory and the cards that I found that were bundled together. All right, so the third and final deck. This is a combination that I've seen floating around on the internet, and I kind of modified it to be, I wouldn't say modern playable, I would say modern legal, but I might try this out. Actually, no, I'm not gonna say I might. I'm going to try this out on X-Mage. I think it'd be kind of fun. Let me know if you decide to try this out. Leave me some comments below. You can also leave them in tapped out if you want. So just to go through the deck, Leatherback Baloth, Lone Wolf. The theme around this deck, if you figured it out by its name, is unblocked creatures, so creatures do damage without being blocked. So anyways, Leatherback Baloth, I like this card. It's fun. Lone Wolf, well, I would say it's just good for a 3 mana. Alright, sorry. I know I keep on going back and forth. Lone Wolf deals combat damage to defending player as though it weren't blocked. Rocks, I added Secura Tribe Elder. You can then, you know, search your library for a basic land card and put it in the battlefield. Then we have what I think is called Shinin' of Life's Roar. All creatures able to block do so. So basically you swing with him and it basically draws all the creatures to this one. It also has an ability called Channel. You tap 4, you discard it, and all creatures able to block target creature this turn do so. So if you decide you want to play this in an instant on one of your creatures, you can do that. Never really used that ability, but I can see where it could come in use. And then there's Terra Stomper, 8/8 trample that can't be countered, so that's not so bad. Just costs tremendous amount to cast. And then you have Thorne Elemental. Moving on to instants and everything else, we have 1 Back to Nature, 1 Clinging Miss, 4 Hunter's Insight, and 3 Infiltration Lens. I know I went through them fast, but Back to Nature destroys enchantments. Then we have Clinging Miss, prevent all damage that would be dealt this turn. If you have 5 or less life, tap all attacking creatures. Those creatures don't untap during their controller's next untap step. Then we have Hunter's Insight. Choose target creature you control. Whenever that creature does combat damage to a player or planeswalker this turn, draw that many cards. So, Thorne Elemental, draw 7 cards. Terra Stomper, draw 8 cards. It just allows you to kind of cycle in through your cards a little bit more, thin out your deck. Infiltration Lens. Whenever a quick creature becomes blocked by a creature, you may draw 2 cards. Prey Upon. Basically make creatures fight each other. Rampant Growth. Nature's Will. And your forest. So Nature's Will. Whenever 1 or more creatures you control deal damage to player, tap all lands that player controls and untap all lands you control. So it's a pretty good card. I really like this card. Don't see it played very often, but I definitely like it. So anyways, that is the first episode of Magic Cards of Legendary Past. Let me know in the comments below if you've ever heard of this card, if you've used this card, if you play this card, if you've played against this card. I'd like to get a sense of how many people actually know this card even exists. Nonetheless, I think it's definitely a legendary card that is worth talking about and discussing. And until next time, see you next video.